From Wakefield, it's the Nolan Car Night Show, inviting you to join Nolan and his guests returning back to the show, Adam Bernstein, this week. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Nolan.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the show, episode 120. And who better to have on after a long period of time and some rescheduling than the man himself, the Adam Big Time Bernstein. Adam, how are you?
I'm good. I'm honored to get that name. Thank you so much, Nolan. I'm happy to be here.
Don't worry, when you use it, when you become even bigger than you already are in the professional world, I won't ask for any sort of fee in terms of royalties or anything of that nature, so you can certainly do it for free. I mentioned the gap it's been since you last were on here, since I was still sort of doing my journey, and you're near the beginning of yours as well to a certain extent. And there's also been other stuff on the court, off the court as well for you, that's been a big change in different scenery as well. But for you, maybe academically and professionally as well, what's it been like since you last were on here a year and a half ago for you?
Yeah, for me personally, it's definitely been a big growth. I feel like, kind of transitioning from an underclassman to an upperclassman coming out of the pandemic. A lot of the experiences and opportunities that I was promised as a freshman or a sophomore, now I'm finally able to take advantage of them. So to have been able to hold a couple of internships since last being on the show, and experiences, a couple of different roles. I'm happy to be covering, URI athletics, both on the winning side and the losing side. It's definitely helped me grow as an individual as I approach graduation, like you said.
I've talked about the amount of time that's been since we last spoke on here, and URI basketball, men's basketball specifically, as I forget how to say the word, has had a lot of transition, a lot of change. Last time we spoke, David Cox was this amount of time left, and this time at URI being about a year and a half, I believe, left on the school with the school and the team before he goes to Maryland. Archie Miller's here and his staff, although he kept a few returning members. It's been a bumpy last few years, right? I should say, for URI men's basketball. So, for you, experience, I've had Nathan on. He sort of described his experience of being front row about it. For you, seeing as you covered a lot of the games and written about them, with the bird's eye view or front view, I've said, what has it been like to witness this change, not just as a student, but as a person covering these teams?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, finding the difference between a fan and being a media member. As a student, for me, I've been able to do that, and that's something that has come with growth and learning. But obviously, a lot of Rhode Island fans and just fans of sports teams in general are impatient, and they just want to win right away.
Yeah.
As a media member, and you mentioned the podcast, something that's been important for me is just recognizing that these are students, they're similar age to myself and you, Nolan. And just realizing that they have a story and there's a reason why they're here at URI and they're playing in the Ryan Center for Coach Archie Miller. So just really being able to define that. I'm sure you feel the same way. You've interviewed a lot of the similar people that I've interviewed. It's really just about identifying the story underneath the jersey or behind the number. So, I feel like media members often harp on the stats and the performance. Yeah. And all right, we lost. We finished in 14th in the Atlantic 10. But again, these are students. They have classes just like me and you at one point. And they have careers ahead of themselves, whether that's coaching, whether that's playing professionally overseas, or maybe even getting a taste of the league, or even pursuing something else. And again, I've talked to a lot of Rhode Island alumni who were here during the Dan Hurley era and even some during the Coach Cox era. And they've talked to me a little bit about, what they've done following college. It's 4 years, but you want to make the most of it. Sure. And for a lot of these students, or student athletes really, they feel the same way. Again, they're always being asked about what happened. Why did we lose by 20? So really just recognizing that difference between a fan and a media member. As a media member and being at a lot of the games this year, it's obviously frustrating. We've had that dark cloud kind of looming over the Ryan Center and over Kingston for a while now, the last couple seasons. But I think it's something that that we'll have to learn in time, is that it's patience. When you take over a program like Archie Miller, we don't expect to win a lot of games. Sure. He even said it at his introductory press conference. We're not going to win a lot of games. It's something that will come in time. Progress will get there. Guys will develop, over time. We'll build around these core pieces that this coaching staff will bring in, and the success will come. Everyone wants, what we had during the Dan Hurley era. Yeah. Which is NCAA tournament, at-large bids, conference tournament victories, and championship victories. pretty much just banners in the
Yeah.
rafters. But those banners take years for them
Sure.
to come. They don't just happen
Yeah.
overnight or within a week. So I think, again, just for fans, just be patient and
Yeah.
just stick with Archie because, I know us media members, we see it and we see the work a little bit more behind the scenes. I mean, we kind of do, but we don't really.
Yeah.
But the fans, I mean, they don't get any taste of practice or press conferences or anything unless we share it. So
Yeah.
just be patient and, again, trust the coaching staff, trust what, athletic director Thor Bjorn and the athletic administrators brought in. Obviously they had a mindset, they had a goal of what they're hoping to accomplish, and they believe Archie Miller is the right person to do it. I've spoke to him a couple of times and I believe he can get that done. It may not be this year, may not be the year after, but in time it will happen.
Before the season started, I mean, there was a lot of talent on the team for URI. They Freeman, they had Weston, they had Bialu, they had Chico, a bunch of players coming in looked like they're going to help. And of course, Ant Harris is another one. And unfortunately, a few of those didn't work out. Josephat got injured in January, would probably be out for a year. And two of the other names I mentioned either weren't with the team. Unfortunately, one transferred mid or near the end of the season. How far did you see the team going prior to all the latter events happening? Did you see the team really be able to provide an impact early on, or were you thinking that will happen next year?
Yeah, I mean, I took this season with a grain of salt. I think a lot of fans were just kind of looking to see what Coach Miller and the staff were looking to do. Obviously, when you have an injury, like you mentioned, or alluded to in Josephat Bilal, it doesn't help. We were very weak in the front court for the second half of the season, a lot through conference play. Asking a freshman like Rory Stewart at, 6'8", 6'7", I'm not sure. I'd have to double check his height. But asking him to step in where he was mismatched and, of course, an underclassman, again, I don't think this was supposed to be a season where we were going to be top 5 in the Atlantic 10. And I think a lot of people know that. And again, going back to projections, if you want to look at that, we were supposed to finish middle of the pack. But when you have, a group of guys like Lou Hutchinson and Jeremy Fulminia, who is redshirting, and a lot of this talent you were talking about, I mean, a lot of them are underclassmen. A lot of them are, first stepping onto a Division I court or playing at the NCAA or collegiate level, for the first time. You don't expect them to succeed. If this team was full of seniors and juniors and grad students, I'd think, all right, we're going to win the A10. Yeah. But again, we had a big majority of freshmen, which I think is good because, a couple of years down the road, they're going to get that experience. They're going to develop over time, put on a little bit more muscle like Rory Stewart. Or Lou Hutchinson. And I think they're going to be great players, whether it's off the bench or even in a starting role. They'll really fit Archie's style and really fit, the rotation well. And I think that's something that, they were looking a few years down the road into doing. And I think they're definitely going to have that same approach with the two incoming freshmen, Cam Estevez and Connor Dubsky. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. But for my mindset, for what I thought was going to happen this year, I didn't think we were going to be a top team. Now, obviously, the dismissal of Brayon Freeman and Harris not joining the program at all, and of course, Bilal getting injured, those are things you can't prepare for. Yeah. Obviously, they don't help. But again, when you take over a program, you have to expect things aren't going to work out the way that you anticipated. I mean, right now, like I said, there's a few guys in the portal. That's okay. I mean, Archie Miller, again, we trust him. We know he's going to get the job done. And, they kind of have to roll with the punches. But I know, to answer your question, I didn't expect them to succeed at that level. I thought there would be a few more wins. I thought, I think it was Jeff Goodman put it best. He went to a practice in non-conference play, and he said to Archie Miller, and he said, you'd be lucky to win at least 7 games this year. Yeah. And when I first heard that, I thought, wow, I mean, he's being brutally honest with him, but I mean, he's right. When you take over a team with underclassmen, with a couple of those issues, like I said, that dark cloud looming over Kingston, things aren't going to be sunshine and butterflies. You need to roll with the punches and, just look ahead to 2 or 3 years. If you experience the growing pains now, a couple years down the road, they're not going to have issues like that. And some of it was out of their control. Like I believe the COVID stint, midway through conference play, or no, sorry, at the end of non-conference play, beginning of conference play. So, a lot of this was out of their control, but again, it will make them a stronger team, a stronger program in the end because they've already dealt with it. They got it out of the way, early on.
Something that they did this past offseason, Archie did, at least to my knowledge, if I'm not mistaken, was get a lot of guys who are guard players and not as many forward players. Does that negatively impact, do you think, or impact in some way besides positively, the team's success early on? Does it help them, or do you think it doesn't? Because you see people like Rory Stewart who have to come in, and he's a smaller player playing the center position compared to these other guys. Does that help, or does that not help a team when they go for more guards than forwards?
I mean, look, I'll say this first off, just to piggyback off of some of the things you were saying. Coach Cox, again, with Coach Archie, different recruiting styles. Their style of play is completely different. Coach Cox was more laid back. He was looking for, a bigger size. And as you mentioned, Coach Miller is more, he wants to play small. He wants to play quick. He's looking for guards, like you said, a big class of guards. I think to answer your question, that will eventually play to URI's advantage. I mean, if you want to look at the last couple of years, and I know college basketball has shifted completely. Now you can take a team from 14 and put them at 6 or 7 because of the transfer portal and, NIL. It's just a different game from when we were last succeeding under Dan Hurley in 17 and 18. But if you look at those teams, I mean, it was filled with depth. We had Jared Terrell, we had Stanford Robinson, we had Fats Russell, who was a freshman coming off the bench, Jeff Doughton, now in the NBA, also coming off the bench as a sophomore. So, I'm missing a few EC Matthews, Jarvis Garrett. It was a lot of guards, and you see that more and more. And that's kind of like what Archie's recruiting to. When he was at Dayton and he had some of that success and he took them pretty far in the NCAA tournament. If you look back on some of those teams, they had a lot of guards like Scoochie Smith. And, they're just one of those teams that, or one of those coaching staffs that they're looking for guards. And I think forwards are definitely important. Like you said, they brought in a shooting forward, maybe almost a power forward, and Rory Stewart, who's having to step up and play the center. But I think having a healthy Joseph Apolao, I think bringing in Jeremy Fumina, who was redshirted this past year, who has that experience with Rory Stewart. And then I think Alex Chiku as well. And then I'm sure they're going to recruit some forwards. They'll be okay on the front court. As for the back court, I mean, expect them to attack the portal, expect them to attack, the high school or the AAU level and find guards that fit his style. Again, they're not going to just recruit anyone and anything. Archie has a plan and he's looking at specific people, specific pieces, and he's going to build around this core. And I think just to say this, you can't really be attached to a lot of the players from last year. Yeah. We finished in 14th, pretty much last, if you think about it. You can't be emotionally attached to a lot of these guys because, like I said, a lot of them are athletes. A lot of them want to win. They have 4 years of college. They want to make a run to the NCAA tournament. And I don't blame a player like Antoine Walker wanting to leave and just stay local, take his grad year. He saw what Bryant did the year prior in the tournament, and he wanted to be a part of something like that and play for a coach like Grasso. Ish Leggett, I mean, I don't blame him for wanting to leave, and going to a Power 5 conference. Maybe he goes back to the DMV and plays for a school like Maryland, his former assistant head coach. I know his dad has a wheelchair, so he wasn't able to make it out to a lot of games this past season, obviously from him being from the DMV and now being in Rhode Island. Maybe he wants to be closer to home. It's a personal situation, so his dad can get off to a lot more games. Like I said, play for his former head coach, who's an assistant there, and he's from the area. A guy like Sebastian Thomas, I mean, it's shocking to a lot of people, but at the same time, you can't be attached to a lot of them. I think you have to kind of move on to what Coach Miller is going to recruit. And if you notice, every single player, with the exception of Brayon Freeman, but he was dismissed midway through, has stayed. That this coaching staff has brought in. Alex Chiku, Brennan Weston, a lot of them are freshmen or sophomore who were redshirt freshmen or sophomore who were transfers over from, Seton Hall, Alabama, a couple of other schools, or even at the JUCO level, but they transfer in and they sign up for, what Coach Miller and his staff are, pitching to them. And I think nowadays it's more about playing for the coach, than the school itself. A lot of these guys are looking to play for that coach. Some people look at Archie Miller and they're like, I'm going to play for him, whether he's at Dayton, whether he's at Indiana, whether he's at University of Rhode Island, I'm going to play for him. If you look at Providence, right? Kim English was just named the head coach. Josh Odoro and Justin Fernandez, who were on George Mason last year, are already
Yeah.
committed a day after, already committed to play for Providence next year. That's a significant jump from the A10 to the Big East
Yeah.
because they want to play for Cam English. They like his style. So I think, there's a big chunk of players that Archie Miller and his staff are, as we speak, currently and actively recruiting. And I feel like, it's more important to focus on them. All the best wishes to Ish if he does choose to leave, Abdu Sam, Sebastian Thomas, and of course, Brian Freeman. But again, it's about bringing in that talent
Yeah.
that this coaching staff is looking for that's going to fit their style. A lot of these players just wanted to play a year for Archie, get a little bit of a taste, see if it was the right fit.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, they're on their way out. And that's okay. Again, it's an industry, it's a business. And at the end of the day, Archie is just looking to win to his style or to his own style. But again, build around players like Weston, Chiku. None of those guys are showing any signs of leaving. They haven't entered their name into the portal since the season ended a few weeks ago. So, you expect them to build around them. And there's one guy now left in Jalen Carey, and we'll see what he chooses to do. Maybe Archie Miller's already met with him and told him that, he wants him to be the veteran or the senior leader next year in the locker room. He's a likable player. The fans like him, his teammates like him from some of them that I've talked to. So, I'm sure in their heads, they have an idea of how they're going to build and structure next year's team, but it's going to take time. It's not going to, like I said, happen overnight. And, now it's just the waiting game. And as a fan, that's what you have to do. But as someone in media, it's the same thing. You can only ask so much. But at the end of the day, Archie Miller was trusted. Thorbjorn and Mark Parlange and Shane Donaldson, they trusted Archie with, they put the key in his hands pretty much to run this program. And now it's about, letting him go, letting him cook and doing what he does. So
on a more positive and uplifting note, of course, which I also mentioned to Nathan as well, the URI women's program somehow, some way, succeeded expectations yet again and made it to the Super 16 round of the NIT tournament before losing, unfortunately. We probably mentioned this, or maybe even then, I'm not too sure, but I know I mentioned it with Nathan, is that you come in with expectations of turning a program around, of saying, okay, we want to do this. The team has been losing, struggling for years and years. We want to bring back up the ego for the team and what it is all about. And of course, she comes in guns a-blazing, full force, max G-force levels on the Starship women's basketball program with Tammy Reese leading the charge as the captain. And last year they do well. They end unfortunately in a way that we didn't want. And then this year they make it into the postseason, make a good run for it. I asked you about your experience covering this new era of men's basketball, but now to cover the women's team and now doing even more successful as the years go on, what's that like from your perspective?
I mean, it's awesome. When I got to URI, my freshman year, I was honored to cover Division I athletics. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. And I told myself that I want to be a part of, Atlantic 10 regular season championship. I grew up watching men's basketball, as, many did. And, obviously my father went to URI. So being from, New York, I grew up watching Dan Hurley and I wanted to be a part of some of that success at URI. But, something that didn't cross my mind was how good the women's basketball team would be. But, after covering the team for a couple seasons now and kind of getting to know who Tammy Reese is, on and off the floor, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, when they were picked to finish, I think it was second in the preseason poll. And like I said, I don't really follow that. I'm not a huge fan of that. I thought that was bonkers because, this is a team that very likely, and I said, should win the Atlantic 10.
Yeah.
Yes, they were, I think, second, or they were tied for first regular season co-champions. But I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked at all, knowing how she's been recruiting, knowing what she's done, what she's put her players through. And, they completely earned everything they've achieved this past season, the 20 plus wins now, the last 2 seasons, recording their first postseason win, getting to the semifinal round of the Atlantic 10 championships, and then getting another opportunity at the WNIT. I had the opportunity to call that first round game on ESPN Plus, excuse me. I mean, this team, I'm definitely happy to see the success. And, a lot of people didn't really believe that they would repeat some of that success from the year prior, since losing a lot of, big time players due to graduation. But, a lot of people believe now that they won't be able to achieve that success again
Sure.
this season with the 3 seniors graduating and Say Lassiter and Madison Haddix and Emma Squires. So, I think, just like I said with Archie Miller, trust Tammy Reese.
Yeah.
She's able to bring in big time recruits. She brought in 3 within the league or within the
Yeah.
conference last year. There's no doubt in my mind, they're going to make an NCAA tournament bid, I think, in her time here in Kingston. And, this was the first year under her signing that big contract. She clearly wants to be here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
She wants to take or lead this team to success or lead this program to success. And, she's already done that in just 4 years, and won under this big time contract. So, trust the process.
Yeah.
She's going to get it done. And I mean, I'm completely honored to have been a part of this. This past year, I was on the call for ESPN Plus for the first round of the WNIT, their first ever postseason win. And also the last game of the year against Dayton, where they clinched the regular season championship. Getting to watch Tammy Reese and some of these girls cut down the net in the Ryan Center is something that, when I got to URI, obviously this is their moment, but this is something I've wanted to cover. And you never know. I mean, there's 15 teams in the Atlantic 10, any team could win any given year. But, to say that in my senior year, I was able to be a part of this and, help, make these memories happen for a lot of these players to come back and listen to some of these calls. I always view this job as, doing justice and giving them the right opportunity to go back. And I could say that I was a part of that moment. Obviously, I wanted justice to the call because it's their moment. A good example was this past year, Inez Debra hit a buzzer beater, which made it onto Sports Center, and I was able to do play-by-play for that. And I was excited for myself, but more than anything, I was excited for her. I mean, she's going to go back and watch that play or watch that shot for the rest of her life. I mean, every win, every game that I was calling, in the Ryan Center for women's basketball team this past year, I would go home and I'd tell my roommates, I mean, I didn't think it could get better. And then the next game I'd come back and it better. I mean, it's a remarkable run. I'm extremely proud to have been able to watch a lot of those games firsthand and in person. And I'll be watching from afar, but I think the success is only going to you can only go up from here. So I'm super happy to have gotten to know Tammy Reese and to have been able to cover her and develop a relationship with her. And what she's done with her teams this last couple of years, I mean, it's remarkable. So.
Well, the one person, of course, you're proud for the whole team and Tammy, of course, but the one person I'm probably proud for the most is Megan Schonecker, former player of the team who experienced a lot of struggle in terms of the team success all 4 years of her at URI, and now she's back here being one of the cornerstones of helping this program succeed so much. And now she's able to cut down the net, something she probably wasn't able to do as a player. And it's such a rewarding feeling because I remember and I might have mentioned this when we first spoke, but I know I mentioned to others, is that my first year at URI when I worked for the Cigar, the one singular basketball story I covered was a preseason game for the women's basketball program. And what I remember about it, and God bless the former coach, nothing against her, I asked her a question about her schedule and the non-conference schedule versus the conference schedule. And she mentioned about how she wanted to make the non-conference schedule tougher. And of course, the season didn't end up too well. And now this team is now benefiting from each other. Tammy Reese is benefiting from these players and then they're benefiting from her. As you mentioned, they're playing in conference. They're playing for another conference team. They're coming to URI to succeed. And she's getting players from out of the country to come play for her. And they're able to experience all of the success because I remember last year, and you probably know better than me, either it was the Duquesne game that broke their streak or another team that they played at home and it broke their streak and they kind of got deflated from that. That kind of affected them mentally and that sort of, they went, now I want to say in a downward spiral, but they sort of went off from there. And now this year they lost a long home streak they had at home, but they kept staying positive and upwards and mentally in a upwards trajectory. And that sort of helped them, I think. That helps them, later on that now they can say, okay, now we can win. We face adversity with this loss that now we can, have an advantage towards that. For you, I mean, from experiencing this as a fan, but also as a person covering this, how does someone like Tammy Reese and this staff continue the success, even if they've had all this experience, when maybe the recruiting class isn't so strong year after year and the potential to lose staff members to bigger jobs?
I mean, Tammy Reese is doing something that a lot of coaches wish they could, and I think you allude to the prior head coach and Diana LaForce. I think something that Tammy Reese does a remarkable job of, and it's not just her. I mean, credit to her staff, is recruiting, like we had talked about, getting players and convincing players, like we talked about on the men's side, to come to Rhode Island out of all places and play, at a high level. I mean, I don't really know what it is, what her and her staff do so well to get some of these players and some of this talent to come to URI, but I mean, she does such a great job at recruiting and building around, the current players. I know they have 2 recruits that are coming in next year, freshmen, or excuse me, they will be freshmen. They're coming from the high school level. But I'm sure, as time goes on, she's going to attack the transfer portal and of course NIL and the portal. It's so important. It's not just on the men's side, it's on the women's side as well. But a lot of these players could be going to a Power 5. You look at schools like UConn who have done so well, for so many years, and now South Carolina is a good example on the women's side of things. And LSU, Tammy Reese is doing that. I mean, obviously it's not the same competition level, it's the Atlantic 10, but she's bringing in players. I mean, Sayani Lassiter started her career off at Florida State, played at Rutgers, and finished off her career 5 years at URI. I mean, she went from the ACC to the Big Ten to the Atlantic 10. I mean, and then, staying in the Atlantic 10, she brings in a really good transfer in Emma Squires from Richmond and Madison Haddix from VCU. So, I mean, whatever it is, and like you said, the international recruits as well from France and elsewhere, they do such a good job at really looking at not just the transfer portal, not just AAU or high school, but just the world. I mean, overseas anywhere, and finding, players to come to Rhode Island and play at this level. And again, that's credit to her staff too. I mean, Megan Schoenecker, excuse me, she's a great example. Her assistant coaches are blanking me at the moment. So Coach A and a couple of others, but they do such a good job recruiting and just bringing in, great classes year in and year out. And, I think there's a lot to be excited about for next year as well. I mean, yeah, you're losing those 3 seniors, but Maya Tori, a homegrown player, had a breakout season. She became one of the best players in the Atlantic 10 in all of the league this past year. And I think she's only a sophomore or junior. I think she was a junior this past year, but she'll have a couple more years of eligibility or a year. And like I said, you can only go up from there. She was most improved player this past year. A player like Sophie Phillips and Dolly Cairns, great 3-point threats. I mean, URI has such a great balance and their depth too. You look at players like Awa Kamara and Anel Dutat off the bench, freshmen, players that are early on in their careers, and they're playing big minutes. She has something that not a lot of coaches in the country have, and that's 2 units. She has a starting 5 and then a second 5 that she can put out there on the floor. If someone's in foul trouble, she has a player that can come right off the bench and fulfill that role. And again, the depth, the recruiting that they're able to bring in year after year, every coach, both men's and women's, I mean, they dream and they wish of something like that. I mean, I'm sure Archie Miller at times when there were injuries and players were in foul trouble. Again, we talk about Rory Stewart, a guy who was going through some of those growing pains, wasn't able to, obviously have a lot of success in his freshman year. He showed some flashes, but credit to him. I mean, he was the last person in the gym. Every time I was in the Ryan Center after a practice, he was always taking shots. And Coach Missoula, grad assistant Missoula, was, grabbing his rebounds, and I could speak to that same thing. I've sat through a few women's basketball practices. Sophie Phillips in the gym, maybe an hour after, the practice ends, and that's just something that Tammy Reese, Coach Reese and her staff does such a good job of instilling that in their heads. If you want something, go out and work for it, and the success will come in no time. And again, 4 years under her belt at URI. Her first season was my freshman year, and now I'm graduating. And I want to say she's graduating with me, but she's only going to go up from here, and she's long term here in Rhode Island. And I think it's one of those success stories that the athletics department and just everyone in the URI community can really be happy about and have a smile on their face. The only thing is, and the only thing I'll promote is get out to the Ryan Center. We need more fans coming out and supporting this.
Exactly.
They were unbelievable this past year, and they deserve a lot more fans than they were getting. And they were growing their population and fans A lot of them were coming to the coaches' shows and supporting the program on and off the court, and coming to a lot of the games and non-conference and conference play. But I mean, we got to fill that Ryan Center up.
I want to ask you this. He's only been here for a short time, especially with the length of contract she just signed. How much, though, with the success she has her name been etched in stone in terms of legacy being cemented in the rafters for URI history? Has it already been sort of set or preset with the success she has, or is there still room for that to happen?
I mean, if you go into gorhody.com and you go on women's basketball and into the record book and you just command F Tammy Reese, she's already broken so many records that she's, highly ranked on a lot of these records. I mean, I believe she's climbing up there if she hasn't already in most wins as women's basketball head coach. And it's crazy to say that because she's only been here for 4 years. I believe she only has 9 losses at the Ryan Center
Wow.
in 4 years. I'm not sure how many wins it is at the Ryan Center, but home court advantage is everything. She takes advantage of that, going back to the fans. But has she etched her name into the Ryan Center? I mean, yeah, I would have to say, yeah. We have never seen, records and totals and statistics like this from this program at all since they've been in existence and since they've been here at the University of Rhode Island. And she has just taken this program to the next level, kind of like what Dan Hurley did, putting us back on the map. This is what she's doing right now. She's, not to compare 2 different teams, 2 different coaches, but she's doing that in a way. She's, putting us on the map. And again, she's getting big time recruits to come to Kingston, Rhode Island to play, a 5th year or a 4th year, or 6th year, whatever it is. So I think she has edged her name into Rhode Island history. And I think, like you said, with this contract, she's only going to continue to. It's pretty remarkable to see, what she's already done. And again, it's very rare to have a coach work out and to have a success story like this. And I think, for Thorbjorn and Shane Donaldson and Michaela Benford, who's the SID for the women's basketball program, I think they need to give themselves a pat on the back for hiring her and what they've done in supporting this program. Because I think even, to host the WNIT game the last couple of years, last year and then 2 this year, I mean, it costs money to host a game like that, a tournament game. And, Thorbjorn, the athletic director, has allowed Tammy Reese to have that home court advantage in the month of March. I mean, he could say, oh, we're not going to spend money on that. We're not going to fund for that. Go play somewhere else. It's great that we made the tournament, but go and play on the road. But he paid for 2 rounds of the WNIT, and we won both of those games this year. And a game last year, unfortunately, we didn't win. But again, we were getting fans to come out. Games were on ESPN3. There were some games this year that were on national television. I mean, I think it's not just Tammy Reese and the women's basketball team. It's women in sports in general.
Sure.
I think gaining, a popularity around women's athletics is something, it's so special. And for me personally, to be able to cover that, sort of this movement and this transition that we're experiencing as a nation and as just in the world and society, to be able to cover that at my own school at URI, I think it's just so special. And I could not ask for a better coach than Tammy Reese to be leading the charge, like you said, or, to full force help us get to be a contender in the Atlantic 10, something, again, I didn't think I'd be able to see on the women's side when I first committed to URI, but she's completely proved everyone wrong. All the doubters, she's turned heads. And to get that national recognition, if you're a recruit at the high school level and you get an offer from URI and you're looking to learn more about what that program's all about, you haven't quite taken your visit yet or had the chance to meet with Coach Reese over the phone or in person, but you turn on CBS Sports and they're playing against Dayton or VCU and they're winning by 15 with 5 minutes remaining. You look to your parents and you say, all right, well, why don't we get on the train and go to Houston? Like, I think it definitely helps. And for her to be a part of that and to get people to come out to the Ryan Center and, to support the program and to, donate on Day of Giving. I mean, it's what you look for in a coach. And again, pat on the back to all those athletic administrators here at URI. I'm sure I'm missing a number of them. They've done a great job with the hire and she's done a great job leading this program.
During this whole time, even during your senior year, when now that you're looking for full-time gigs, wherever it may be, you've still maintained your podcast on a consistent basis. Now that you're getting to the end of your academic careers that we've said before multiple times, how far along do you still see yourself doing this? Do you still see yourself doing this on the side, or do you see this as this week I'll do it once, maybe next month I'll do it once? Do you still see yourself doing that?
Yeah, I get this question asked a lot, almost every day, actually. But I love doing the podcast. I mean, it really, when we talk about, my college career, it's what has defined me. I came out of the pandemic my sophomore year in 2020, living in Brookside. There weren't any opportunity. I was promised a lot as a freshman and sophomore, and going home for spring break my freshman year and then not coming back until the following year. There weren't really a lot of experiences and opportunities on campus. So I wanted to start something similar passion to you. I wanted to start something like that. And, I've been able to walk away with so many connections, and I've been able to work with coaches and, media members and athletes. And like I said before, just telling their stories, again, it's so people look at performance so much and, oh, this guy had a bad game and, oh man, he's injured. He's never going to come back and be the same player. But forget that. I mean, who are these people? Tell their story, right?
Yeah.
Underneath the jersey or behind the number. I love it. I mean, I'm going to continue to do it as long as I can. I don't know just at the moment what my job will be, but if I have to do it on the side, a couple episodes a month, maybe one or two a week, okay, that's fine. But I think at the end of the day, if I'm not able to, I'd love to be a part of a podcast somewhere else or something like that. I love the idea of it. I love interviewing. I love telling stories. I mean, if you're going to get into this industry, you have to know how to do storytelling.
Sure.
And I love the entire side of it. I think that I'm going to be able to graduate now with a brand, that I could continue to promote. And I think it helps out my resume and my portfolio a lot. And I'm going to continue to build that brand and, again, try and land different guests. And if I have to branch out of the Rhode Island market and explore other athletes and coaches and media members, I mean, so be it. But I love the idea of a podcast, and I'm just very fortunate that I've had the opportunity to do it. And like I said, I'm just going to do it as long as I can.
The last question I want to ask before the little game I have is, after 4 years at URI, who is Adam Bernstein?
It's a great question. I think Adam Bernstein is someone who's a go-getter, someone who's willing to learn, someone that, has a lot of experience and that wants to just continue to build off of that experience. Someone who's passionate, who's dedicated, and, only wants to continue to improve. He's never really satisfied or is happy with, what he's done, because he always feels like he can achieve a higher level or the next level. And I think, when I graduate, I'm obviously proud of what I've done, and I've become so used to what I've done the last 4 years that it's going to be a rocky adjustment at first, or a tough transition at first. Because, I'm going to be doing things next year that aren't what I used to, or I'm going to be doing things I loved at URI, or I'm not going to be doing things I loved, when I was at URI. I'm going to be doing other things, it might be more boring or something else. But I think walking away from URI, I'm just blessed, and I'm, just honored that I was able to be a part of something so special. Again, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, even when we weren't winning, even when, we were losing, and we've had a lot of that on the men's side, and even when we were winning, and we've had a lot of that on the women's side, it's all been great experience. And to been able to cover Division I athletics, I mean, some people don't get the opportunity to even go to college. But to be considered for a lot of the roles that I've been a part of, and be a part of a lot of the experiences that I've had, I mean, I can't speak enough to it. I was told one thing when I moved in my freshman year, and that was, you got to be selfish. And that doesn't mean, be, selfish, be mean to everyone. It means, you put yourself out there, and you got to, if you want something, be selfish, go out and get it. If you want to join a club, go and join it. If you want to call a game, go and join it. I feel like if I didn't, reach out to certain people, if I didn't ask questions, if I just hid in my dorm room, or, didn't really make an effort to meet people and connect. And I was very introverted. I still consider myself at times to be an introvert. If I didn't do a lot of that, I feel like I wouldn't be where I am today. And I would just say to anyone who's an incoming freshman or looking to fill a path like this, be selfish, be yourself, and keep going, keep grinding, stay consistent, because it will come in time. And if you don't ask questions, if you don't, take the opportunities and the chances to meet people, you won't be able to achieve some of those goals. And I confidently say that every goal that I've set out for myself, being on the sideline on an NFL field, to being on ESPN Plus for a men's basketball game, doing play-by-play, I've been able to achieve, I almost, if not all of those goals that I set for myself as a first semester freshman. So, who am I? I'm the same person, but I've grown a lot and I've learned, and, I'm just eager to continue to learn and to continue to fulfill this passion.
Well, it's what you make out of it, and if you make the most out of it, then there's no regrets. You have, of course, if maybe mistakes you said that happened mid game that you're calling, you say, "Oh, I wish I did this better. I said this." But
every game, every broadcast.
If you look back and say, "Oh, my hair looked a little funky this way," you just or that
Oh,
shirt didn't look great, but you say, as long as I enjoyed the experience and enjoyed the hellish circus that it was, and that's okay. I want to end similar than we did many almost 2 years ago with a segment called the One Word Challenge. So what entails with this is I'll throw out a few names of people, places, and things that have some connection to my guest being the wonderful man himself, Adam Big Time Bernstein. He has to do his best to say a word or two that best comes to mind when he hears it. So, Adam, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
First one, Kingston RI.
Second home.
The Ryan Center.
Oh man, I already said home. One word. Family.
Tammy Reese.
Legend.
Zach Austin.
Oh, I already said legend. You're testing me here. A mentor.
Success.
Adam Bernstein.
Hard work.
College athletics.
And last but certainly never least, in this cosmic universe we all call Earth that we currently live on this lifetime and the next few, Adam Bernstein.
This is tough. This is a tough game. A grinder. A go-getter.
There we go. That's what we're like. Well, good start. I want to say thank you for taking the time to come on the show. This is always a fun treat to talk with someone who you're sort of been able to watch from a bird's eye view or first person perspective as you've achieved a great deal of success. The time is now yours to plug or put anything out there for people to tune into or look out for.
Oh, first off, I just want to thank you again for having me. I appreciate your support. Anyone who may be tuning into this interview, I appreciate your support as well of my coverage and all of the work and content, everything I've been able to accomplish the last 4 years and everything I will continue to accomplish. You can follow me, follow my podcast on Rhody Rumble, on YouTube, almost anything. It's Rhody Rumble, and personal content. Twitter is Adam Bernstein 18. And yeah, personal Instagram _ Adam Bernstein. But again, I just want to say thank you, Nolan. And I just want to thank anyone tuning in for your support, and go Rhody.
Yeah, well, if you enjoy this, because who the hell wouldn't? Because down the line, when you see Adam Bernstein playing an NBA Finals game in Boston or somewhere else, you're going to say, holy shit, I should have subscribed back then. So subscribe, follow, comment, share, all that good stuff. It makes me feel better. So at night, when I'm sleeping, I'm saying, yes, these people enjoyed what I'm putting out there. Follow on Twitter, Nolan Carnite, and Instagram, The Nolan Carnite Show. In the words of Johnny Carson, the Deans of shows totally like this one, I bid you all a heartfelt good night till we talk again next week.